morning, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Floship Live. If you're joining us today, you're here to find out what are the key things to know and avoid to ensure success in this year's peak season. So peak season is right around the corner, and I'm sure many of you e-commerce businesses are gearing up to boost your sales and to make sure that this is your best peak season ever. So joining me today, I have some experts from the logistics supply chain industry who are here to share their advice and their expertise on what you need to do to get your store set up for your most successful season ever. So first off, I'm going to introduce them and let them introduce themselves to you. So me today, I have Emma Newman, the head of account management from Floship. Hi, Emma.
Hi, James. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much. Would you mind to share with me a little bit about yourself, your role as head of account management and what you guys do at Floship?
Sure. So thanks, James, very much. Nice to meet everyone this morning. I hope everyone is well. So my name is Emma Newman, Head of Account Management here at Floship. I am based out of Hong Kong, but my account management team are based globally across the globe for all of our clients who are also across the globe. In terms of our platform, so we have an internally built software that allows for our e-commerce brands to connect their own shopping carts, so we can support their global expansion across all of our different fulfillment centers around the world. And not only that, we allow for brands to maximize their end-to-end process with our offerings of our carriers with our end and last mile shipping services.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing, Emma.
Thank you.
Also joining Emma and myself is Kermit McKinney, from Strategy and Partnerships at Zonos. Hi, Kermit.
Great to be with you, James.
How are you doing today, Kermit?
I'm doing well. So let me introduce Zonos here to the folks out in the world. So Zonos is a SaaS company. We offer a suite of APIs and e-commerce platform plugins that help businesses grow their international e-commerce business, which includes landed cost calculations, product classifications, and customs compliance.
That's exciting. So it's something that e-commerce businesses absolutely need in the 21st century.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you so much and welcome, Kermit. And the final guest that we have today is Vincent Fung, a FedEx Global Account Manager from FedEx. Hi, Vincent.
Hi, James.
How's it going?
Good. So let me do an introduction about myself. I'm Vincent. I am the Global Account Manager, so based in Hong Kong and work for FedEx. As for FedEx, we just celebrate our 50 years anniversaries. And FedEx, we offer a complete solution, logistics solution for all of our customers. So no matter it is small parcel or even a single envelope, we handle everything. So I'm looking forward to share more with you and hope that we get all we want today. Thank you, James.
That's great. And happy 50th anniversary to FedEx. All right, guys. So I think our audience are ready to, dive deep into this. So with peak season approaching and, 2023 has been a little bit of up and down year, there's been a lot of different projections about how it's going to turn out. But in terms of this year's peak season, what are we seeing for a demand for, and how can e-commerce merchants lean into these trends to fine-tune their supply chain strategy? So Vincent, I'm going to come to you first.
Yeah, but about the customer trend, we see that with the onset of the global holiday season and gradual recovery of industries after the pandemic, the trend of online spending goes on and e-commerce will continue to thrive. In e-commerce events like Black Friday or Cyber Monday, which signal the final countdown to Christmas, continue to make a difference to the customers. In fact, many of them would like to have even more online shopping festivals. The outlook of Hong Kong consumer markets in 2023 is upbeating, with retail sales forecast increase by 13% to approximately Hong Kong dollar 395 billion. Many retailers have increased investments in the online sales platform to improve the overall online shopping experience. PwC Hong Kong expect online retail sales to continue to grow in 2023, but with a slower growth rate. The growth of e-commerce will depend on different factors, including development of consumer data protections, ethical AI, and other key features of the digital economy. Another thing worth mentioning is the cross-border spending trend. I mean, Hong Kong e-commerce market is categorized by extremely high level of cross-border spending. Cross-border spending make up to 70% of the country's total e-commerce market. And Hong Kong advanced logistic infrastructures make spending, shipping, transportation, and delivery extremely convenient, both for the consumers and suppliers. I mean, according to the FedEx e-commerce report, what next in Hong Kong e-commerce, we find that e-commerce share of Hong Kong consumer purchase have increased over the last 3 years, and almost all, 96% of them, see the growth of the e-commerce through a positive lens.
Okay.
The biggest benefit we saw with e-commerce is the ability to access cross-border product with a click of the button. So that is what we saw for the e-commerce trend. Back to you, James.
Thanks so much for sharing, Vincent. I mean, that's really insightful. If you could, make that FedEx report available after this recording, I'm sure our audience members would find that extremely useful. I just want to circle back and touch on a couple of points that you raised there, especially about the kind of technology that you mentioned to fuel the e-commerce growth. Now, Kermit, I know you had something that you wanted to share with us about what you're seeing in terms of the different technologies and the different kind of marketing tools that e-commerce brands have been using. Would you mind to share a little bit more?
Absolutely. So I think it goes without saying that in the marketplace today, social media has taken a center stage on how we actually buy goods and services around the world. In fact, just some quick statistics to rival what Vincent was sharing with us earlier. 15% of all shoppers start their shopping search with Instagram. That Instagram has become a very major platform for consumer spending. 11% use TikTok now. And 46% of all shoppers have purchased items from an Instagram checkout. The bottom line is that for the social media programs, the fewer clicks results in greater sales opportunities. So in addition to social media, I think the next thing that really we need to help customers focus on is how can they make sure that their platforms are optimized for mobile platforms. That's another key element in the buying experience for consumers. It's interesting, if you look at a lot of shopping cart platforms, they give you the illusion that they're completely optimized for social platforms. But I think it's incumbent upon our merchants out there today to do a quick review and make sure that all their images are properly formatted, that the textual content is formatted properly. And then the last thing that I wanted to mention about the technologies that are available today is a lot of new AI-based technologies around shopping assistance are really becoming more pervasive. It provides the merchant the opportunity to showcase companion products, to upsell more products that are related to the item that they're looking at. If a person is looking at an article of clothing, then the suggested article of clothing that would match that particular garment or piece is appropriate. So all those constructive ways that we can put the right types of products in front of the consumer and make it very simple and quick for them to check out, that's really what we're seeing is the major trend. And then I'm going to put a plug in for a product called Zonos Hello, just to make sure everyone's aware that for those e-commerce platforms that are doing business internationally, we want to make sure that they're optimized to handle that international traffic. And so Zonos Hello is a free product that they can use to actually welcome those international shoppers and provide a different experience than the one they're providing today. Thanks, James.
Thanks so much for sharing, Kermit. And again, I'm sure our audience would love to hear a little bit more about Zonos Hello after this event. So Emma, I actually want to come back to you. I know Kermit and both Vincent mentioned talking about, the different social media checkouts and the online platforms and the need to kind of connect and make sure all the operations are smooth across the different channels. And I know that's something that you do here at Floship, is make sure that each store and each brand is optimized for different regions. So what kind of trends have you been seeing from some of your clients over at Floship?
Yeah, thanks, James. So obviously, we all know that over the peak season, it is the busiest part of the year. There is a higher demand and increase of online shopping across the consumer trends. One of the key aspects of that is that you're going to really need to optimize what your product looks like on a mobile. I could just tell you now, for example, that majority of millennials are now shopping online, and they're also becoming increasingly lazy, and so you need to be able to enhance that whole user experience when you're actually going through. So I'd really encourage any e-commerce brands to actually sit in front of their laptop or their mobile, because we also have obviously a laptop as well that people will be buying and things from when they're at work, but make sure that both of those types of interfaces are optimized for the way that consumers will be buying their products. So really go through the end-to-end process, because you can bet your bottom dollar they're going to be going online to shop, rather than going to the retail brick and mortar store, as we've seen, just as in terms of, I guess, the boom of technology over the last 10 or so years. So you really want to be looking at that. But one of the other sort of key things is to make sure that you are delivering and offering the most efficient sort of services to your customers. So, for example, you might want to consider some alternative shipping options when you're going through peak season, because ultimately, peak season there is a higher demand. You might want to increase the scope and the number of different options so that you've got a spread of the services that your consumers can sign up for, and you might want to encourage them to purchase more by offering some incentives with, say, perhaps a free shipping model for certain products that they might be buying. I mean, one of the other key things as well, talking about consumer behavior, is personalization. And we all know that one consumer's behavior will be different to another. So I really strongly encourage, as I say, to go through the user experience that the brands would be facing for their own market, and look at how you can personalize the experience for those different markets that you're offering your products to. And then on the upside of that, you'll hopefully get some increased in sales numbers as well, which is obviously everyone's bottom line concerned with.
Yeah, I think that's what most people are concerned with, is, making sure that the bottom line is profitable. And I like what you said, the brands might want to consider expanding the scope of services or the scope of options that they're offering. But, times have been tough, and, a lot of e-commerce brands, especially like SME sized brands, they might not have the resources or the capabilities, to expand the scope of service. So what advice can you kind of give to our audience, or for anybody who's working for an SME e-commerce business, on how they can run the business, expand their scope, and what would be the key success factors in that? Vincent, do you have any kind of advice you could share here?
Sure. We see that the shift from offline to online commerce has revealed an increasing demand for cross-border deliveries. I mean, your customers want more. As we see, B2B customers, they expect efficiency and transparencies. So they expect faster time to market, and they reduce the defected rates and customize delivery products. So they want perfect. While your B2C customers, they want more flexible deliveries in terms of when and where they get their goods. I mean, most of them are not willing to pay for shipping as well. At FedEx, we work closely with business who wish to establish strong presence in local and overseas markets through e-commerce, such as sportswear, fashions, and accessory brands. We provide deliveries with diversity solutions and tools attending to their different needs. So moreover, we are now offering FedEx International Connect Plus, what we in shopping to call the FICP, for you and your with a competitive pricing. So it is a day-definite service which you can control your package with an advantage of fast and convenient deliveries. So you can further check with our website to understand more about this service. So FICP strike a perfect balance between services, time, and costs. So we can further share with you with the landing page of this service after this event. So thank you, James. Pass back to you.
Thanks so much, Vincent. And, so FICP is going to help brands to get their products where they need to be to their customers. Now, one thing when it comes to cross-border shipping that they're going to need to take care of is the duties and taxes. But obviously, having an international accounting team can be quite challenging. Kermit, do you have any insights or tips that you can share about how brands can successfully navigate duties and taxes?
Absolutely. So it's obvious after listening to Vincent and Emma that Floship and FedEx are a great power duo in providing these services to customers worldwide. Going back to the question about how can businesses operate and be a little bit lean and still get everything done, this is where the SMEs need to leverage the strengths of their 3PL and their carrier. There's a lot of talent and strength within Floship and within FedEx to collaborate and provide some of those additional resource services that they need. Additionally, Zonos, we specialize in all things cross-border. So we're uniquely positioned to provide tax remittance and tax compliance services to those customers that are shipping internationally, to make sure that those packages, the duties and taxes, are calculated, that they're collected, that the packages are delivered seamlessly through a DDP solution set. And so again, with the three of us in this trio, we have really all the resources and talent necessary to accomplish the objective of getting more international cross-border shipments out the door. And then finally, I just want to make a plug here and say that obviously something we haven't talked about quite yet, but is really imperative, is that these SMEs, they need to make sure that their analytics are up to speed on their websites, that they're collecting the right kind of data, that they know where their shoppers are coming from, they know what countries they're shipping to, because that will play a strong role in the future of how they actually disseminate their products and their product offerings around the world, to make sure that Floship and FedEx can regionally ship those products in close proximity to maximize the efficiency of what Vincent was talking about, which is making sure that we've got the lowest cost shipping solutions out there available.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that, Kermit. Now, Emma, I just want to switch to you and talk a little bit about what do 3PL and fulfillment partners need to know to make sure that their brands or these sellers, that their operations is successful for this year. What are the most important things that are going to need to be considered here?
Yeah, thank you, James. So as we've already touched on, we all know that peak season is the busiest part of the year, and volumes will start to increase all the way from September onwards. So it is critical that you open a clear communication with your 3PL to establish what the forecasting will look like, and doing a proactive look at that to ensure that the 3PL is actually well set up and prepared in terms of the resource and allocation for manpower is key. And I can guarantee that even throughout peak season, although you'll see us start an increase exponentially as the trends do show, on a daily basis you will see spikes. So you need to be as clear in communicating that, so that everyone, all sides of the party and ends of the spectrum, will know what the volumes will look like, and not just from the 3PLs but also from the couriers as well. We need to be very, very clear about what the volumes will look like for them. But one of the other things is you want to be then very clear to your consumers about what service level agreements you have set up. So offering them an extended lead time, being as proactive as possible to ensure that the consumer's aware there might be a slight increase in the time that they will be expecting their delivery to arrive back, because ultimately everyone needs to know that there is going to be an increase in volumes. But if you can clearly communicate that to your consumers, then maintaining that trust element with your consumers will ensure that they are not in for any surprises, and they can be well prepared to ensure that they are receiving their deliveries ahead of any big national holiday. So the other thing I would also like to point out is there's a need for reviewing on a continual basis So having the open communication channel, as I mentioned before, but go back and review with your 3PL to see if there are anything that you want to be amended slightly, and setting up regular meetings with them. So here at Floship, you'll have your dedicated account manager for any of our clients on the call. Your dedicated account manager can work with you on what your forecasting planning looks like, and setting up those regular meetings to ensure that we can meet your demands will ensure that as we work through into peak season, everything is well aligned and prepared for the busiest part of the year.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing, Emma. And what you're talking about there is using all of the data points available from their supply chain management system, and kind of deep diving into the numbers and looking at, what are we seeing? What can we expect to see? And that can be used for a number of ways. So the first one I want to kind of touch on is how this data and what types of data can be used to, optimize operations throughout the peak season, because we know it's a continuous thing. But then also, how can we use this data to help businesses reduce operational costs and grow their business? So Kermit, I'm going to come to you first in terms of how and which types of data we can use to optimize the operations.
Absolutely. So there's two different types of data that I'm going to speak to. The first one is referencing the analytical data that we talked about, or that I spoke about just a couple of minutes ago. It's the analytical data that is being collected through your e-commerce shopping platforms with regard to the regionalization of where your customers are located, the predominance of who's buying product from which country. This will enable you to leverage the skills that Floship has in connection with FedEx in that partnership, because that's the one thing you guys have done. You've built this vast network of 3PL locations around the world to provide that type of facilitation of moving goods as economically as possible. The second part of data that I want to talk about is cross-border data. This is something that we haven't talked about, that isn't really on the forefront of many people's minds today. But with the advent of ICS2 and CARMS and some of the other international tax compliance regulation, it's becoming more important that we understand what kind of products we're shipping internationally, that we've got HS codes, which is a whole other topic, James, that you'll have to do a seminar on, and the product descriptions. Those are really imperative that we begin to collect that type of data and house that data, so when we are doing international shipments, we're passing good data, because that will streamline the operation as it relates. Because the last thing we want is a bad customer experience where a merchant has shipped a product to a consumer, it doesn't have good data, it gets held up in customs. Now the customer's having a bad experience, the merchant's having a bad experience, because they may have to actually bring that package back. And it could have all been resolved if we would have just dealt with it early on in the life cycle before peak. So. And again, that's where the trio of our services, with our cross-border expertise and with what has already been built by Floship and FedEx, in providing those services, is a win-win for the customers at large.
Absolutely. And I think you're right there as well. We need to be aware of the international data and be able to analyze and distill trends from all of those international data points. Now, Vincent, working for FedEx, you guys are no strangers to moving goods internationally and across borders. What kind of systems or data do you use or give to your clients to help them, minimize any kind of errors, reduce any kind of costs, and to help scale their e-commerce business? Can you share a little bit more about that?
Sure. Now we're in the digital industry. Digital centuries and the AI centuries. You cannot success by yourself. So you need to work with different partners. Sometimes 3PL solutions, also duty and tax to get the data. So you need to work with the partners to get the competitive edge, so you deliver your package faster with better experience. So that's why we have worked with different solutions providers we've created some of the FedEx compatible softwares to integrate with the FedEx and they could provide access to shippings and other services you want. I mean, most of the new solution provided by the 3PL, they can help e-commerce business automate the e-commerce chart and marketplace shipments on eBay, Amazon, PayPal, Google Checkout. So they handle everything in one single software. So hence, they reduce costly keystrokes errors and help access rate for FedEx without switching from program to program and re-enter all of the informations. So one of the very good example of our customer is that it is called Beanbox. So they are the e-commerce business selling the coffee beans, and US is their main destinations. They have e-commerce business, and they have find that label generation become one of the bottleneck for Beanbox during the peak season in 2020s. Before that, they are just simply work with FedEx, created airway bills, but with the usage of our competitors' solutions with easy posts, I mean, they kind of reduce the failures in label generations and errors in data formatting while focus on scalabilities and stabilities at the same time. So they focus on marketing and sales, and they leave the logistic and the whole supply chain to EasyPost and FedEx. That is how they create a competitive strength and grow their business in the peak seasons. Thank you, James.
Thanks so much for sharing, and it's great to see a real life example of how businesses are adapting to these new technologies and how they're making them work for their brand and for their e-commerce business. Now, I want to touch back on something Kermit mentioned, which is about the terrible experience of customers having to return a product or goods being sent back to brands that might not necessarily have had the right code in place, or things like that. And this, I think, underscores the importance of having a return solution, because when I shop online, I look for a company that's going to give me a return easy way to returns, because usually I might buy one or two of the same item because I'm not sure on the sizing. And I think that's a pretty standard purchasing practice for many consumers now. So in terms of setting up a returns policy, how can businesses make that a value-adding experience for both the business and their customers? Emma, do you have any advice that you can share here?
Yeah, so one thing that I would say is you want to go back and review what returns policy you have, if any. Some brands don't even offer a returns process because they find it quite cumbersome, but actually at Floship, and along with Kermit and Vincent, with obviously FedEx and Zonos, we do have a complementary return solution overall. One thing that I would also say is that you might want to consider extending the returns window for consumers, because ultimately during peak season, there's one thing to consider after they've obviously received their parcel. If it's just no good and they don't want to have it, it's just another burden to think, okay, I've got to send it back in X number of days. But during peak season, because it's going to be the busiest time of the year, look to expand that window so that you can keep your consumer happy and give them some peace of mind on what they're actually buying online. I mean, it is definitely a bit of a balance when it comes to returns management, because ultimately there are costs involved in that with any business. But one of the other things that I would also mention is you want to be working with your 3PL provider to ensure that they are ingesting back any returned items at the maximum efficiency. So you'd need to set up some clear SOPs and QA procedures for any return items that's sent back to the warehouses, because we all know consumer behavior as well can be, myself in particular as well, I do receive items and I do decide that I want to send things back. In fact, I was reading some stats over the weekend that there was a 60% of consumers intend to return their items back. So when they are received back in the warehouse, which is back to my original point, you want to make sure that you have that clear, defined process about what to do with any item that comes back through if it's damaged, or if you want to obviously resell it because you want to then keep the costs down, you need to be clear about what are the resellable items. But one thing I'd also point out is that kind of buzz theme at the moment is all about sustainability, and that is where many consumers are wanting to buy from sustainable e-commerce brands. And if you can offer, just in terms of what marketing you're doing, and offer out to your consumers that you have got sustainable practices when it comes to returns, that will also encourage consumers to come and buy from your store. So if you're receiving items and it's, for example, it's not resellable, but it's donatable, and you want to open it up to other charities, then that is one thing that I'd also mention to increase that value add to your markets.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing, Emma. And I think what was interesting, what you mentioned just there, was about how the returns can be kind of pre-sorted, so to speak, if the brand works with their fulfillment partner to set these predefined actions of what's going to happen to these returned items. Is it going to be disposed? Is it going to be resold? And that allows them to kind of maximize and optimize the returns processes so that, especially during the peak season, they avoid like stockouts and things like that. So thank you for sharing that. But I want to know a little bit more about the kind of implications that returns has on duties and taxes, and especially during the peak season. You might be buying gifts for your relatives who are overseas, for your friends who live in different countries, but they might not like it. They're going to want to send it back. What kind of impact does a returns policy, or what kind of things does it need to consider in regards to duties and taxes? Kermit, maybe you can take the ball on this one.
You bet. So obviously, with any returns policy, it's different when I speak to domestic. I'm really referring to, and in whatever country it is, an in-country shipment. Those return policies take on one type of persona. An international returns policy is very different because, again, oftentimes it's significantly more costly to bring those goods back from an international destination, certainly more costly than typically the shipment to actually send it to that consumer. So great care has to be given as to what that returns policy will cover for those international consumers. And so when you look at the returns policy, oftentimes there'll be, if it's within the country and when it's outside the country, and they'll differentiate what those two policies are. The other component is that with Floship and with many customers or merchants now that are actually shipping DDP, which means they're actually allowing those duties and taxes to be prepaid so that the consumer doesn't have to deal with it at the door. Now what happens if those taxes have been paid, the product is cleared, it's been delivered to the consumer has decided they no longer want those goods, they want to return them, and their expectation is they're going to get 100% of that value back. But the reality is the taxes have been paid to another tax authority, and they're out of the control of the merchant who's actually already paid that, typically through the carrier like FedEx. So again, there's a lot of discretion that has to take place as far as informing the customer what to expect when those duties and taxes have been paid versus when they haven't been paid. The whole cross-border issue is one where we as Zonos and in partnership with FedEx and Floship can take on that role of helping them to articulate and draft a proper policy that incorporates this international concerns as well as the domestic concerns in a policy that will, I guess, from my perspective, will meet the needs of the merchant and the consumer in a way that's understandable and practical. And so that's kind of what we do every day. So we're excited to help in that vein. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kermit. And I agree. I think, it's all about finding a balance, finding that equilibrium between what works for the business and what works for the consumer and what is easy and clear and concise to understand. So thank you for sharing. Unfortunately, everybody, our time together is coming to a quick close. But before we do sign off for the day, I want to just come to each of you and revisit each of you once again and get your key takeaway. So what would be the one thing that you would tell sellers that they need to know, and what is something that they would need to avoid? All right, so I'm going to give you like a couple of seconds to think about that. So what would be your key takeaway from this for this webinar for people tuning in? Kermit, should I come to you first? I mean, you look quite prepared.
I'm actually ready for this question. So I've kind of alluded to this throughout most of my responses. We live in a day and time where the world is changing, and many of the countries out there have employed these low-value tax schemes. You cannot ship products now into the EU or the UK, Ireland, without having paying taxes now for most of the shipments, the low-value shipments that are entering into those countries, and all the rest of the countries are following suit. So this whole notion of cross-border tax compliance is only going to get progressively more difficult. And so my strong encouragement is that they work with companies like Floship and Zonos and FedEx in a way that they can actually offset or offload those burdens of that tax compliance to partners whose full-time responsibility it is to manage those tax compliances for cross-border shipments. And again, I feel like I'll put a plug in for Floship. The Floship has gone to great lengths to produce a solid solution set that incorporates those landed cost calculations and DDP shipments so that it simplifies that for the merchant and for the consumer.
That's great. Thank you so much, Kermit. Vincent, same question. One thing to know, one thing to avoid, key takeaway that you'd like to share.
I would say one key takeaway is you cannot success alone, so you need to work with partners. So you work with Zonos and Floship for all the management, planning, all the things, and you leave the deliveries to FedEx. So that you need to be success with all of your partners. Thank you.
Leave it to FedEx to get your things where they need to be. All right, thank you for that, Vincent. And Emma, same question to you. One thing to know and one thing to avoid.
Yeah, thank you, James. So one thing I would absolutely encourage all of the e-commerce brands that are logging into this webinar is to make sure you've got ample planning. Planning ahead is imperative. Setting up a regular communication stream with your providers, with regular meetings, is key. You need to be forecasting appropriately with the numbers that you're seeing perhaps from your historical data and the future planning ahead numbers that you're seeing. And if you need to adapt your policies, if that comes down to the returns, for example, then please do reach out to have those discussions with your account manager, because ultimately you want to be maximizing your sales. We want you to be successful, and we want everyone on the call today to be able to grow their business. And there's lots of good and exciting things happening at Floship, Zonos and FedEx. So do stay tuned for all of the new and exciting updates coming through in future, and we'll be happy to help you guys.
That's great. Thank you so much. I'm excited, to see where these partnerships and these collaborations are going to take us and e-commerce businesses in the future. So yeah, please stay tuned. And I hope everybody who logged in today, you've been able to gain some insights and get to take away some action points that you can apply immediately to your brand to set yourself up for peak season. So I just kind of want to conclude here and say farewell to everybody, and thank you again so much for joining me on this beautiful sunny Wednesday morning. So a huge thank you to Emma Newman, Head of Account Management at Floship.
Thank you very much, everyone. It's been a pleasure to speak to you all today, and yeah, have a lovely rest of the day. Look forward to connecting with you all in future.
Thanks so much, Emma, and a huge thanks to Kermit McKinney, Strategy and Partnerships at Zonos.
Great to be with all of you today, and look forward to the opportunity of working with you guys in the future.
We look forward to it as well, Kermit. And a huge thanks to Vincent Fung, the FedEx Global Account Manager from FedEx.
Yeah, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to share what FedEx is capable of. I'm looking forward to work with you in the futures. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Vincent. And thank you so much to our audience for watching. Hope you have a great rest of your day, wherever you're tuning in from. And we wish you all the best for the 2023 peak season. So remember to communicate, use the data to your advantage, and get yourselves a return solution set up. So best of luck to you, and thanks for tuning in to Floship Live. Goodbye.